Okay. Well, good morning again, good evening, good day, wherever you are. Welcome. Good to see all of you. Some of you I know, some of you are new faces. Welcome to all of you. My name, for those of you who don't know, well, you can read it actually on my little box, Andreas Feb. And I'm a spiritual teacher. And specifically, I teach a path called the Diamond Approach. So today, I would like to explore with you a little bit one of the main principles of the Diamond Approach, which is the title of the webinar. The obstacle is the way. This principle actually is applicable in many areas of life, not just the Diamond Approach, although a lot of the time we don't use it. So I think things will become clearer and more, begin to make sense as I continue with this teaching. So usually we encounter obstacles in our way in life. And we usually regard them as unwanted problems that we want to make go away. That is the usual perspective, I think, of most human beings. So usually we try to go around the obstacle, go under it, above it, over it, try to ignore it, we close our eyes and pretend it's not there. We have all kinds. We are very creative in our defense mechanisms and avoidance mechanisms, which is fine. All those are very useful in different situations. But when it comes to problems, not very useful. Now, there are situations where, of course, avoiding an obstacle is a good idea. For example, you are driving your car on the road and suddenly a big rock falls off the mountain in front of you. Please avoid the obstacle. Don't try to go through it. That is not the time for spiritual principles. But we use that same strategy with obstacles on the emotional dimension, at the psychological dimension, at the mental dimension, at the spiritual dimension. And that becomes very ineffective. Even sometimes in the physical realm, dealing with, facing the problems is a good idea. Think, for example, of if you have a child and you send them to school, and they come home and they said, we had math today. And you say, well, do you have problems to solve? And they say, no, our teacher doesn't give us any problems for homework. You will probably be worried about it. And if this keeps going on, probably you will go talk to the teacher. Why don't you give our kids problems to solve? Because you know that's how they learn, by solving problems. Even at the physical level, that's more at the mental level. Even at the physical level, many times we create problems, like when you lift a heavy weight. It's a problem, and it's difficult, and you lift, and you lift, and by solving that problem, your muscles get stronger, right? It's a very simple thing, really, very simple principle. I remember when I was in school and we would run, and our gym teacher would put obstacles in the way, and we just have to jump over them, this. And that developed our bodies, strengthened our bodies, our speed, our, capacity in a variety of ways. I remember many years ago, I was having lunch here in Denver with a friend of mine who is Greek. And he's a professor here at the university. And we both love words. We love etymology. What is the origin of words? So I remember I was preparing this talk back then to teach it in Cyprus, where I was going at the time. And I was explaining to him this, and I said, well, and he says, do you know the word problem, the etymology? I said, no, tell me. He said, well, the word problem comes from the Greek word proβλema. So vlima means projectile, and pro means forward. So he said, proβλema is that which, by resolving, it propels you forward. I said, perfect. That's what I need to put in my talk. So problems, and you see that by the kids solving the problems that the teacher gives them, it propels them forward. By lifting weights, you get stronger. It moves you forward. And yet, we do our best to avoid obstacles in the way when it comes to life in general. It's a fascinating thing, isn't it? It's like we know it's helpful to solve the problems, to face the problems, and yet we keep avoiding them. So when it comes to inner work, it's a lot easier to avoid the obstacles. Like, if you have, for example, you have a phobia, right? You just avoid it. You have a phobia of heights. What is it called? Acrophobia, huh? Fear of heights. You just don't go to high places. If you have agoraphobia, you just don't go out, you stay home. So during the pandemic, you are in heaven. It's like, hey, I'm in my element. But you can see how that limits the possibilities, limits us in a variety of ways. So really facing our phobias and resolving them helps us become stronger, opens the possibilities for us, makes us healthier. However you want to look at it, it's a useful thing to really face, confront our problems. Now, when it comes to the inner spiritual work, how does that work? What kind of obstacles are we confronted with in the inner work, the spiritual work? And how do we work through the obstacles? And how does that really help us go forward? So in order to really talk about this intelligently, I would like to propose a model of a human being. One way to conceptualize, picture a human being. So as you know, we are all multi-dimensional beings, right? There are many dimensions to us. We have our physical body, we have our mind, the mental dimension, we have our emotions, the emotional feeling dimension. We have our, if you want to call it something different, the psychological dimension. Yeah? And we have our spiritual dimension. All of these are different dimensions, and there can be subdivisions in those. Like, at the physical dimension, you can say, well, there is the visual dimension, and then there is the auditory dimension, and then there is the olfactory dimension. You smell things. All of these dimensions combine to create the totality of our experience. Now, when it comes to the spiritual dimension, most of us, at the beginning of our spiritual work, we really have ideas, concepts about what the spiritual dimension is. You say things like, we have a soul, we have a spirit, And if you ask people, what is a soul? They say, well, a soul. No, I don't know. What do you mean? Well, it's like this thing, soul. We have difficulty really defining it. What is it? Or if you say, I have a spirit. What is that? It's like a ghost, Like, what is that thing called? The friendly ghost? Casper. It's like that. I have a spirit, Casper, the friendly ghost. What is spirit? Some people even say, I have an essence. What is it? So we want to really understand what is this essence. But you know what? It's not just about understanding it. It's about experiencing it. And that is really what spiritual work is about. It's about discovering and experiencing and knowing experientially our spiritual substance, our spiritual dimension, our soul, our essence. That is what spiritual work is about. It's not about beliefs. I believe we all have a soul. I believe we reincarnate or we don't reincarnate. I believe the soul lives on after death, or I don't believe the soul lives on. Those are beliefs. That's not spirituality. They may be spiritual beliefs. They are beliefs about the spiritual dimension, but they are not really what we mean by spiritual realization, to know experientially our spiritual essence, our soul. So when you say, I have a soul, or I have a spirit, who are you referring to? Who is the I that has a spirit, that has a soul? Have you thought about that before? Probably you have. Who is that? What is this sense of self, this I that claims to have a soul or a spirit or whatever you want to call it? So that is part of the spiritual work in the Diamond approach. We want to understand what is this I that we take ourselves to be, and we keep referring to it but without actually defining it precisely. And what is this soul, this spirit, that this I has? Not a definition, but experientially. It's like if I say, do you know halva? Some of you may have heard of this, halva. Yeah, many people don't know what is halva. They say, oh, it's a Middle Eastern sweet that is just heaven. You say, really? Yeah. And if you join the H10, I'm going to bribe you. There will be halva. I will make it. And then you will be able to actually taste it, bite into it. And then the flavor will fill your mouth and your brain, and your whole experience will be filled with halva. And you will think that you went to heaven temporarily. Halva is a dangerous thing, because if you think this is the way to heaven, you can start eating too much. And that can be problematic. Don't eat too much halva. But the point I'm trying to make is that you will not know what halva is until you taste it. Right? Until you have it in your mouth, you bite into it, and it starts dissolving in your mouth, and the flavor just of the sweetener and the butter and the cinnamon and the rose water fill your senses. Now, can you imagine actually experiencing your soul like that? Feeling it, touching it from inside, tasting it, even seeing it. My soul is pink today, or my soul is yellow today, and it changes colors depending on the particular quality that you are experiencing. If you are feeling love, it becomes pink. If you are feeling joy, it becomes yellow. If you are feeling strong, it becomes red, and so on. Yeah? And those are the kinds of things we really study and explore experientially in the Diamond Approach. And that's what we will be doing in the H10, Diamond Heart 10, the group. Exploring experientially, discovering experientially, and experiencing, realizing, knowing the substance of our essence. So you see, I'm saying discovery and experiencing the substance of our soul. The implication is you already are that. And that's true. You are that already. But you see, as you were growing up as children, we started developing a certain sense of self that covered up our experience of that spiritual dimension, the soul, the essence, the spirit. Even some of us had experiences as children when we would actually be seeing spiritual things, and we will say things to our parents, and they shut us down because they thought, that's crazy. Or what are people going to think if you start saying things like that? Don't say those things. So there is a lot of prohibition that went on. On the one hand, it shut that channel down. It closed the avenues of experience of this dimension of ourselves. On the other hand, it started creating a sense of self that it was based on our physicality, our body, our relationships with our mothers, fathers, other people in our lives, you know, and that is what developed into what we call the ego. And all spiritual traditions, of course, tell us the ego is the obstacle. The ego is the problem. The ego is the difficulty. The ego is what's in your way of experiencing who you really are. Realization of your true nature, realization of your spiritual dimensions. That is true. And this is where the Diamond approach differs from other traditions. Most traditions say, kill the ego, get rid of the ego, split the ego off, don't feed the ego, get rid of the ego, starve the ego so it withers away and dies. How many people have you met who have done that? Even people who seem to have managed to do that by isolating themselves in a cave. When they come back into the world and they are faced with different things in the world, their ego comes back roaring. You know, and many of them fall on their face. Right? As we know, many examples. The reason is that you cannot get rid of the ego. The idea that we can get rid of the ego is based on a misunderstanding of the structure of a human being. You see, the way we perceive it, the way we understand it in the Diamond approach is that at our core, we are this essence, we are this spirit, we are this soul. But this personality, this ego self, has created a crust. It's like it is a crust. This ego self is a crust that took the surface of the spirit, of the soul, and solidified it into a self-image, a sense of self that we call the ego. And because this is solidified and becomes opaque, we cannot see, we cannot experience what's underneath. That's how the ego becomes an obstacle to self-realization, to knowing ourselves for who we are at the spiritual level. It's like, you know, in the winter, the lake freezes and there is a layer of ice. And you cannot see what's underneath the ice. It's solid. And you cannot see through. How would you discover what's underneath the ice? You can say, well, you know, this is ice, the lake must be somewhere else. So you just take off and go looking for the lake. And that's what a lot of spiritual paths are. This is the ego, let's go somewhere else where the soul is, where the spirit is. And then we start visualizing the spirit. It's like this, it's like that, and we visualize it, and we can have experiences of it. That's great, that's wonderful. But the problem still remains. It's like you haven't penetrated the layer of ice and sink into the lake and start swimming into the water of spirit and experience it and feel it and experience it on your skin and taste it and smell it and hear the sounds of it and know it intimately. You see the problem? So in the diamond approach, we say, no, 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 no. Don't go somewhere else trying to find the soul, the spirit, your true self. Dive in. It's just under the surface. Go through the obstacle. The obstacle is the way to who you really are. You see how the whole thing begins to make sense? And if you really think about it, what's the fastest way to who you are? If who you are is underneath the surface, what's the fastest way? Going around? No. Through the obstacle. That's the fastest way. So the diamond approach actually one of the most efficient, fastest paths that I have ever seen, ever known. And I've experienced many paths. I was in a mystical Christianity group when I was a teenager in Cyprus. Then I joined the Hindu group and the Sufis and a little bit of Buddhism. You know, experienced many different things, and there's some other weird things. You know, because I was looking, I was trying to find, you know, what is the truth? I was a weird kid. And then I found this path, and wow, the whole thing started making sense. It's like, yeah, this path is rational, intelligent, you know, not that other paths are not, you know, they have their own logic and their own rationality and they work. But most paths ignore this fundamental principle. You cannot kill the ego. You cannot ignore the obstacle and hope that it's not gonna come back and bite you in the face. You have to deal with the obstacle. You have to work with the problem. That's how you will be propelled forward. That's how you will get stronger. That's how you will dive into the truth and know it experientially. Taste the halva. So this path, and the group that we are starting, you know, in a few weeks actually. What is it? About 5-6 weeks in March. It's not about beliefs. You know, I've said it before. Those of you who didn't hear me, I will say it again. Do not believe anything we tell you. And I mean it. Please don't believe what we tell you. Experiment with it. Try it out, try it on, try it out. Find out, is it true? Experience it. If you do and you find it's true, wonderful. The teaching is working and we have succeeded as teachers. If you just believe, I have failed, because then all I have created is a belief system. You know, and you know belief systems. You know, there is a shorthand for belief systems, BS. So the moment we believe, we know, we stop investigating, we stop exploring. And so we are dead in the water. We don't discover. So that's another fundamental principle of the diamond approach. I don't know. I may have known yesterday, a moment ago, but is my spirit, my soul, manifesting right now the same way as a minute ago? So it's always alive in the moment. Experience again and again and again in the moment, continually unfolding, opening up and revealing its potential. And I will tell you, it's not the same. Once you have known your soul, your spirit, you don't know it forever, because it is a dynamic unfoldment of a living presence that is always different. Even the same quality. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing this work, I don't know how many years now, since '88. And I've been teaching it for many years. I'm still experiencing things that I discovered early on, and I have known and I have taught 5, 6 times. And every time I would teach it, and it's like, wow, now I'm experiencing it in a deeper way, a more substantial, deeper dimensionality to my strength, to my love, to my joy. So this is what is open for you. This is what the potential that's available to you if you want to explore it. It's like Mission Impossible, should you choose to accept it. Except it's not a mission impossible. It's a very possible mission. And it is actually a great mission. I would like to, kind of give you a brief kind of a sense of it. How does this work? It's like, for example, if I say I feel lack of confidence. Usually we take it, okay, so I don't have confidence. I don't feel confident. Lack of confidence or low self-confidence, however you want to frame it, And usually what do we do? Well, some people repeat affirmations, I'm confident, I'm confident, I'm confident, I am confident. And then, okay, visualize yourself feeling confident in front of people, and you practice. Have you solved the problem? Some people think, yes, of course you have solved the problem. Even if you succeed to feel confident, you haven't solved the problem. You've created an overlay of confidence that covered up the lack of confidence. You see that? That is the problem with positive thinking and affirmations. They create an overlay. It's like we have our true nature, what we are underneath, and it's covered with layers of conditioning. And now we create another layer that looks better. It's like painting the house. It looks better. It's the right color. You like it better. You haven't really solved the problem of the asbestos under the paint. You need to remove the asbestos. Otherwise, eventually it's going to get you. So how do we do it? Well, we become curious. It's like, I'm experiencing lack of confidence. Andreas says, go through the obstacle. Okay, what does it mean? Go through it. Well, start diving into the experience. The obstacle is the experience of lack of confidence. So I start feeling into it, because that's how we dive into it. We go into the obstacle. So you start feeling, what does it feel like? Lack of confidence feels like I am little. It feels like I am not important maybe, or not capable, or there is a sense of weakness. However you experience the lack of confidence, right? It's like there is something wrong with me, or people are not going to like me, or whatever. is trying to hide. I don't want people to see me. Oh God, I wish the earth would open and swallow me, and lack of confidence. So you start exploring this experience, and as you experience it, as you explore it, you go deeper into it, and it begins to feel actually like you're actually going into a hole. It's like you're opening the experience of the lack of confidence, and you begin to experience the inside of it. Not just how it manifests externally, but also how it feels inside. And maybe you feel, oh my God, it's like I feel it in my solar plexus. It's like there is this, like a shaking, like a weakness, like a tremor in my solar plexus, like there is lack of solidity in my solar plexus when I feel the absence of confidence. And that's difficult to sustain that, to stay with that. So I may run away from it. And I may have to come back to it many times to get familiar with that feeling and gain the capacity to stay with it. Yeah. But as I gain the capacity to stay with it, and then I just realize, oh my God, it's like this thing is like, whoa, it's like an open chasm from my solar plexus going down into my pelvis, and the bottom of it is like I have no bottom of my pelvis. It's like an open, oh wow, and I start feeling scared. It's like I'm gonna fall. And then I brace and I get away from it, and then the next time I go into it and I feel it again and go, interesting, it's a hole. Wow, what will happen if I actually go through the hole? And I go through the hole, and as I go through this hole, and I feel I'm falling, and I fall, it's like suddenly, it's like I open my eyes, and it's like, wow, it's like I landed somewhere. It's like a different world. It's like, wow, it was dark, and now it's light. And it's not only light, but I feel like I'm sitting on something. Wow, and this something is, wow, this is interesting. There is something solid in my pelvis. It's not an open, empty hole anymore. And my solar plexus is not shaky. It feels, I'll be damned. I feel confident. I feel like I'm sitting on solid ground. Actually, there is a sense of solidity inside me. And if I pay attention to it a little more, it's like, wow, this is solid, massive, thick, boom. It's like, boom, it's there. Like a mountain of silver, sterling silver, solid, sturdy, impenetrable, immovable. And then I can breathe. It's like, wow, I can just relax on this thing. This is great. And then I experiment. I get up and I start moving. It's like, wow, my legs feel solid. And I feel so grounded. It's like I am solidly on the ground. So what I'm describing is the experience actually of a particular quality of our soul, of our essence, that we know as the will. And the will actually feels like solid silver. And it gives us the experience, one of the experiences it gives us is a sense of confidence. In addition, it gives us the experience of feeling supported, and also the capacity to persevere, to keep going, See that? So that's just an example, of how to penetrate through the obstacle, use the obstacle as the way into what I really am. And this is the process of our inquiry, which is the main practice in the Diamond approach. We do meditation, we do self-remembering, we do many different practices. We have movement practice, that we do, but also, our main practice is inquiry. We inquire into the obstacle in the way. That's how we get towards the treasure underneath the obstacle or inside the obstacle. Anyway, you can tell I like this a lot, so I can go on talking for a very long time. But for those of you who join us in DH10, you have the opportunity to hear me and hear Laurie and hear Chris talk and talk and talk and talk. And then you start talking. And you'll be hearing each other talking and expressing your experiences about these things, the discoveries, the joy and the exhilaration, the amazement of what treasures lie within you. Each one of you. There is nobody who doesn't have this treasure inside them. You are the treasure that has been covered up. You're like a diamond in the rough. Yeah? And as you discover your diamondness, it's like you're polishing the diamond. And then, before you know it, it's like you are this beautiful, multifaceted, precious jewel with all kinds of colors scintillating through all the different facets, And then you can feel your love, the pink, warm, delicious sweetness that is warm and fills your heart, fills your chest, and makes you feel very loving and very loved. It makes you feel like you are loved. What's the obstacle in the way of you feeling you are love? We'll work on those things. So anyway, in the diamond approach, you see, we don't just talk. We explore experientially. Because as I said before, it's not about believing. It's about discovering for yourselves. So I will give you an exercise to go into breakout rooms together and explore. But before we do that, because there may be some people who don't want to do the exercise, and that's fine, or have some commitment that you need to go. So before you go into the exercise, I would like to give you, and Peter is going to put it in the chat. So in the chat, Peter has put the link to the application that you can fill out to join the Diamond Heart 10 group starting in March. If you click on that, it will open up the application, download it, fill it out, send it to me, and I will put my address on there. Andreas, DH10, 10, not a number, but spelled out, at gmail.com. Okay. So I want to put those things in, so you have them in case you need to go before we come back. So we'll do an exercise. The exercise will be 3 people together. So it's going to be a monologue. We call it a monologue, where you just explore experientially for yourself for 10 minutes. The other 2 people are there witnessing. They don't say anything. They don't interject anything. They don't tell you right, wrong, not even expressions on the face that encourage you or discourage you. You know, sometimes you may hear something that may sound strange. You don't go, yeah, no, that will discourage the person. You hear something that you like. No, you don't do that. That's encouraging the person to go in that direction. You don't want to do that. You want them to just explore without interference to discover the truth for themselves. You see? We don't interfere with the other person's process. Exploration, inquiry, discovery. Because we want the truth to be your truth, not mine. Okay? So once the first person, so one of you will time it, on your phone, put the timer on 10 minutes. Once the timer goes off, the next person, no time to waste. The next person goes on 10 minutes, the timer goes off, the next person, half hour, then take 5 minutes break, go to the bathroom, stretch, whatever, and then come back, and we will do the Q&C, questions and comments. The exercise is, what do you consider to be obstacles in your spiritual development? Pick one of these obstacles and inquire into it a little deeper. What is this? What is it about? Things like that. How is it an obstacle? How do you feel about it? What happens if you don't try to go around it, but you bring your curiosity to it? Okay? And this is, the whole exercise is in the chat, so you can read it there. But I will read it for you again. What do you consider to be obstacles in your spiritual development? Pick one of these obstacles and inquire into it a little deeper. How is it an obstacle? How do you feel about it? What happens if you don't try to go around it, but you bring your attention, your curiosity to it?